Hello. How are you doing today? How is your day going? Well, I'll tell you, I sure am glad that I get to talk to you about the most special person of all once again. As you know, we do this every time we're together. We talk about God. We talk about Jesus, who is God. And we like to talk about how special he is. Well, I've got something here. I have this to help us with our lesson today. You may be wondering what this is. I don't think so. You know what this is, right? This is a balloon. And what color is this balloon? Can you tell? It's red. Balloons can be fun, right? How do you play with a balloon when you have one? Do you bounce it up and down and see how long you can keep it in the air without it ever hitting the ground? That can be really fun. And if you get more than one person, you are bopping into each other as you bop the balloon up into the air. Well, balloons are fun. You can go back and forth like this. You can do all kinds of things. What was that? Did that surprise you? I knew that was going to happen, but you didn't. Did that make you afraid at all? Oh. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about fear today. Have you ever been in a storm? Can you think about the last big storm you had? Now, we had a snowstorm recently. What about like a thunderstorm? Do you ever get afraid during a thunderstorm? What is it about the storm that might cause you to be afraid? The loud noises? The bright flashes of light? Well, I have a picture here. This is one part of a storm. The wind. Sometimes the wind makes such a loud noise. Sometimes you wonder if the trees are going to break down because the wind is blowing so hard. We can get afraid during storms. Maybe you get afraid. Maybe even your parents get afraid. You know, sometimes we get afraid when we can't control things. Do you know what I mean when I say control things? There are things that you can do and make happen and not happen. Can you control the wind? Can you control a thunderstorm? So sometimes when things are out of our control, we can get afraid. We can't stop it if we wanted to. Well, we have a story today. We always have stories, don't we? And where do our stories come from? The best book ever. This is my Bible. This is what I read from every day. Do you have a Bible? I bet somebody in your house has a Bible. Well, our story today comes from this book, and it's a pretty exciting story. It's about Jesus, and it's about his friends. And his friends are afraid. Well, in our story, Jesus is in a boat with his friends. And if you've been thinking about what Jesus has been doing in our other lessons, he has been really busy. He has been out in the desert. Do you remember that? And he spent 40 days and he didn't even eat anything for 40 days. And he was really hungry. And he also was speaking to lots of people. He was walking around to different places. And he was preaching the word. He was telling people about God. And he was healing people. Do you know what I mean by healing? Like somebody was sick or a part of their body didn't work right. Maybe they couldn't see right. And so he fixed their eyes, or he fixed their hand, or he fixed their legs so they could walk. Or he took a disease away. He was really busy. Do you remember when he went to the house and the house was so full of people that the man was brought to him by his friends who couldn't walk, and they ended up going up on the roof and opening the roof of the house up and lowering the man down to him so Jesus could heal him? But if you remember, that was a real problem. Jesus's friend, or the man that Jesus healed, had a real problem. His legs didn't work. He couldn't walk. But that wasn't his biggest problem. Do you know what the man's biggest problem was? His sin. So Jesus took care of his biggest problem. He said, "Your sins are forgiven you." But he was really busy. What I'm trying to let you know is Jesus was a busy, busy person, and he would get really tired at times. Do you see up here on the board, it says, there's a picture of Jesus up in the corner, and below it, it says, fully God, and then it says, and fully, and I put some spaces up here for us to fill in. Jesus is fully God. You remember all these words that describe God? That's Jesus. And he's fully, what do you think I should put here? There's 3 letters. There's a space for 3 letters. Fully God and fully man. Jesus is fully God and fully man. So when I say that, I mean that he got tired like you and I, and he got hungry like you and I. And so Jesus was out with his friends in a boat, and they would often get in a boat in order to get to another city or another town. And Jesus was exhausted. He was so tired that he was sleeping. Well, while he was sleeping, a great storm came up. And when you're in a boat, and do you remember that some of Jesus's friends were really fishermen? Peter and James and John, they were fishermen, so they knew how to be out on a lake. And they had been in storms before. But this was a big storm that came. And with storms out on the water come big waves, right? Can you see it in your imagination? Can you see Jesus and all his friends out in a boat and big waves come up? And when you're in a boat, you don't want waves to come up over the edge of the boat, because what could happen to your boat? Your boat could sink. Well, these fishermen knew that this was a terrible storm and that they were in danger of sinking. That's what they believed. I have another picture here. And this one shows big waves, and it shows lightning, and it shows the boat, and the waves are even bigger than the boat. Do you know what was happening to these men? They were becoming really afraid. And they thought that they might even die out in this lake with this horrible storm, that it was going to sink them. Well, guess who's still asleep? That's right. Jesus was sleeping during this big storm. He must have been really tired. Have you ever been so tired that you can sleep through just about anything? Well, Jesus was so tired he was sleeping through it. But his friends were so afraid that they ran, or they went over and woke him up. Well, they didn't think Jesus cared that they were about to die in this storm. Do you think Jesus cared? Of course he cared. But something made Jesus a little bit sad. They didn't trust Jesus. They were getting very afraid in this storm, and they didn't trust Jesus. So Jesus did something pretty amazing. Do you know what he did? He spoke to the wind and the waves. You know what the wind and the waves did? Maybe I should tell you what he said first. Jesus said, "Be still." Can you picture that? Can you picture the wind blowing real hard and the waves coming up over the edge of the boat? And Jesus spoke to them as though they had ears. Do you know what happened? Did a big wave wash Jesus right off the side of the boat? No. Did the wind just get stronger and stronger, and so they couldn't even hear Jesus' words? Nope. The wind and the waves obeyed Jesus. The wind stopped and the waves fell down, and it was calm. The storm disappeared. This picture shows the boat, and I don't know if you can see, the men are cowering in the boat. They're afraid. And this one in the middle, do you know who's standing up in the middle? That's Jesus. Jesus spoke, and the waves stopped, the wind stopped, and these friends of his, the disciples, they were amazed. And they said, "Who does this? Who can speak to the wind and the waves and they obey like that? Nobody can do that." Well, somebody can, and somebody did. Why do you think that the wind and the waves obeyed Jesus? Was Jesus like a magician? So it was like magic? No. Do you remember these words over here that describe God? Can you look through those words and tell me which one describes Jesus being able to tell the wind and the waves to stop? Which one says he can command anything to do anything he wants? Are you looking? This one? That's right. Jesus is all powerful. He only can tell the wind and the waves to stop. And they have to obey him. The disciples weren't all powerful. They would have surely told the wind and the waves to stop, but they knew they couldn't. And so it really surprised them when this person in the boat did just that. Jesus was showing them that he was able to do what they couldn't. This was all out of control for the disciples, for his friends, but it was in control for God. So sometimes in life, we have things that are out of our control. We can't do anything about them. And so how do we respond? How do we react? Sometimes we become afraid. Sometimes fear overcomes us. Do you think Jesus ever got afraid or is ever afraid? He is not. He never has been and never will, because he is so powerful and so strong. Well, there's another story that I wanted to talk to you about today. And they went to land, and Jesus did some things, and they followed him around. Well, one day Jesus said, "Why don't you go over in the boat to this other place, and I will meet you there?" Well, they did that. Jesus was their friend, but he was also very respected by his disciples and his friends. So when Jesus told them to do something, they did it. Well, they went out in the boat, and it was nighttime, and they were traveling across the lake, when all of a sudden they look out, and there's someone walking on the water towards them. Did you hear me? I said somebody was walking on water. Have you ever tried that? Have you ever stepped out into a lake or a swimming pool thinking that maybe you could walk across the water? Well, the disciples, or Jesus' friends, could not believe what they were seeing. You know what they thought at first? Do you know what a ghost is? That's like a spirit, like something that doesn't even have a body. They thought they saw a ghost that was out on the water, which that might make sense because a ghost wouldn't sink in the water. But as this person came closer, he realized that these men in the boat were afraid. And so he called out to them and said, "Do not be afraid. It's me. It's Jesus." Well, I have another picture here. There's the boat full of men. And if you were able to see this, this is a pretty small picture for you. All of the men, all you can see is their heads over the edge of the boat. And that's trying to say that they were afraid. They were afraid because they couldn't believe what they saw. Well, Jesus knew they were afraid. Did you know that Jesus knows everything about us? And it matters to him. When you're afraid, Jesus doesn't get angry. He wants you to not be afraid. He wants you to trust him, but he's very kind to us. Is there a word over here that can help us understand that Jesus is very kind towards us, even when we're sinning or when we don't have faith in him or trust him? I think there might be a couple. Actually, I see at least three. Jesus loves us. Jesus is patient with us. And there's a big word here, compassionate. Jesus is compassionate towards us. He knows that we're weak. He knows that we get afraid. And he doesn't get real angry with us. But he loves us and he cares for us and he wants us to trust him. He's very gentle with us. Well, Jesus, when he saw that his friends were so afraid, he called out to them and said, "Don't be afraid, it's me." Well, that surprised them. Of course it surprised them because a man, a living man, was walking on water. Well, his friends has seen a lot of amazing things that Jesus could do, but they just never thought in a million years that Jesus would be able to walk on water. Well, he did. And do you remember what word from the attributes we talked about when Jesus calmed the storm, the waves, and the wind? All powerful. Only someone who's all powerful can walk on water. Well, Jesus' friend Peter called out to him, said, "Lord, if it's you, let me come out to you." Would you do that? Would you want to walk out on some water and be with Jesus who's standing out in the water? I think that's pretty neat, but it was pretty bold. It was pretty courageous of Peter. He was the only one that said that. What do you think Jesus said? Nope, just stay where you're at. I'll be right there. That's not what Jesus said. Jesus said, "Peter, come out to me." And Peter looked at Jesus, and he kept his eyes on Jesus, and he was very excited, and he stepped over the edge of the boat, and he stood on water. And then he started taking steps towards Jesus. But something happened. Something distracted Peter. Maybe it was the sound of a wave, or maybe a wave splashed up onto him and maybe it got him wet. Well, he looked away from Jesus. Do you know what happened? This is Peter. And up here is a word, and it says afraid. Peter took his eyes off of Jesus, and he looked at the things around him, the water, the waves, and he became afraid. And do you know what happened? He started to sink into the water. And he called out to Jesus, "Jesus, help me." Did Jesus say, "No, if you're not going to believe me, and if you're not going to trust me, go ahead and go into water"? Does that sound like Jesus? That sounds like somebody that's really mean and doesn't care. But Jesus knew that Peter was afraid, and he wanted to help him not be afraid. And if Jesus wants to help somebody, he does. And so he grabbed Peter, and Peter came up out of the water, and they both got into the boat together. Because Jesus loved Peter, and Jesus was patient with Peter. Jesus had compassion on Peter. He does that with all his friends. Are you his friend? Do you think Jesus would want you to be afraid of things? He doesn't. Jesus wants us to trust him above all. And we find out things about Jesus in here, in the Bible. It tells us about him. It tells us how much he cares for us, how much he cares for his people, how much he loves them, and he wants their best. He wants their good. He wants them to grow in their love and understanding and their trust in him. So he works with us and he cares for us, just like he reached out and grabbed Peter's hand and loved him and helped him into the boat. Jesus does that with us. So, next time you're in a situation, now there's a big word called circumstance. We have circumstances, things that happen around us, that we're in the middle of, and that we can't do anything about. Can you think of anything right now in your life that you just can't do anything about and it makes you really sad? Or you're responding by getting angry because you can't do anything about it? Sometimes I do that, and it makes me sad. Sometimes when things happen that I don't want to happen, and it might make me afraid or frustrated, I get angry. And that's sad. Because I'm not trusting God the way I should. I'm not trusting Jesus. So is there something going on in your life right now? I mean, you could have somebody that's really sick in your house. Sometimes dads or moms get really sick, or grandmas and grandpas get really sick, and we can't do anything about it. So Jesus doesn't want us to be afraid in those things, but he wants us to trust him. Jesus will do what's best for us. That's what the Bible says, and we need to trust him. He has a wonderful plan for all things, and he wants us to trust that he's working it out well. So, next time you're afraid, remember who is strongest, who is all-powerful. And what would we do, or what should we do? We call out to him, just like Peter called out, "Lord, save me." And Jesus reached out and helped him. So we call out, and we say that's praying. So next time you're afraid, or something is out of your control, and you're not responding well, you're either getting sad or angry or afraid, call out to Jesus and ask him to help you and to show you how he helps you. He won't turn you away. He won't say no. He will care for you. He will care for me the best way possible. He always does. Well, I hope this helps you. As you grow older and older, many things will happen in your life that may cause you to be afraid, or you will respond in fear. But just remember, there's one who is able to help, and he stands ready to help you. His name is Jesus. He is the most special person of all. Well, that's our lesson. If you have any questions or want to talk about it, maybe find your dad or mom and ask them about things or talk to them. It's just been so good to talk to you about Jesus. Well, until we get together next time, which I hope there is a next time, I hope you are well. Just keep your eyes on Jesus. He will not disappoint you. He will always be there to help. So we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.